Hi guys, I'm Trina and today I'll be going over my top 14 books of 2014. First I'm going to tell you how many books I read and then do a quick rundown of what those numbers mean. Then I'm going to show you my top 14 favorites ranked in order. And I'm going to wrap up by telling you my 2 least favorite reads of the year. Okay, so in 2014 I read a total of 128 books. Of those 128, 89 books were full-length books, like novels or nonfiction or just anything that was a full published work. 21 of those books were novellas or short stories, 14 of those books were graphic novels or manga, and 4 were audiobooks. And now counting only the 89 full-length books that I read, 77 of those were YA, 10 were adult, and only 1 was middle grade. So I need to branch out a little bit more on the age ranges next year. My most read genre of the year was contemporary, which actually surprised me, followed closely by fantasy, which was no surprise at all. Of the full 128 books I read this year, 45 of them were 5 stars and only 4 were 1 star, so I had a pretty good reading year. Alright, so let's start with the countdown of my 14 best books of the year. At number 14, I put Noggin by John Corey Whaley. There were a lot of books I really wanted to squeeze into this list, but the reason I'm going with Noggin is because I feel like it's the least read out of a lot of my favorites this year. So I want to bring attention to, this was really a fantastic book. It was an extremely unique idea and a fun read, and it just made me think about a ton of things like science and medicine and ethics and friendship and aging. It's very, very underrated. At number 13 is If I Stay by Gail Forman. I just read this book this year and it really moved me to tears, which is saying a lot because I'm not really a book crier. There are just so many quotes in this book about life and the meaning of life and the importance of friends and family. So this definitely gets points for being very emotional and very thought-provoking. Number 12 is Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson. This was just a really fun, quick summary read, but it's actually got a deep message to it. The main character was extremely relatable to me and I loved the theme of breaking out and becoming who you are. Number 11 is Isla and the Happily Ever After by Stephanie Perkins. I know a lot of people aren't fans of it, but to me, it showed a realistic relationship and it showed the type of relationship that I wanted to see. I don't always want books about crushes that lead up and then at the very end of the book the characters get together. Number 10 is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This was just another really cute, fluffy romance read. Number 9 is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This was a book that I was kind of avoiding because the hype was just unreal. Usually when books are hyped that much, they don't live up to my expectations, but I finally did pick it up and it blew me away. It lived up to the hype and more. The reason I liked this book so much was because the writing style was very unique and very artistic. Number 8 is The Silkworm by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling. And I did not like the first book very much, but this book totally blew me away. It was a wonderful mystery and it just had me gripped and on the edge of my seat the whole time. I love the way that she wrapped up the mystery and revealed everything in the end. Number 7 is Cress by Marissa Meyer, but really it's the entire Lunar Chronicles series because I read all 3 of the books that are out this year and I loved every single one of them. The first book, Cinder, was the best series opener that I read this year, and Cress was one of the best series installments that I read. This was also my favorite retelling and my favorite science fiction that I read this year. Number 6 is Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This was my favorite series installment of the year. It just took that series and upped the stakes so much higher. Selena is my favorite character of the year, and this is my favorite fantasy of the year. Number 5 is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This book was the most emotional read that I read this year. It was very cathartic. It was just a big emotional release for me. It had the most personal meaning. And if you've read this book, that main character was me when I was his exact same age. The exact same stuff happened. So this just touched on a very personal level. I had no idea what this story was about. It surprised me and I cried my way through the last half of this book and just like all-time favorite for sure. Number 4 is Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge. This was my favorite standalone fantasy of the year and my favorite 2014 debut novel. Number 3 is a duology that I am counting together. Not a Drop to Drink and In a Handful of Dust by Mindy McGinnis. I read both of these books this year, and of all the books I read this year, this one was the most realistic setting to me. Number 2 is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I read this one earlier in the year, and I actually expected it to be my number 1 book of the year for a long time because Kath is just so relatable, and the romance just made you weak at your knees, made me weak at my knees at least. This was the best contemporary I read of the year and the best standalone book I read of the year. The only reason it got knocked out of the top spot is because I read a book in November that has just ruined me. And that book is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare, and I'm going to go ahead and count the entire Infernal Devices series. I read all of them this year and I gave all of them 5 stars. This was my best overall series, best series finale, best romance, best characters, my most read author of the year, and the real censure was the most horrible book hanger I've ever had in my entire reading life. I was just so worked up because of that epilogue at the end, and just seeing that just blew my mind. I just don't even have words for this book. It was intense. That is probably the most fangirling I did all year. Okay, so now that we've got all of the good, let's move on to the bad. And this is not an insult against anyone who loved these books, because books are for the readers and what works for you might not have worked for me. So my second worst book of the year was The Death Cure by James Dashner. This was the finale of the Maze Runner trilogy, and I liked the Maze Runner, but those last 2 books were just so repetitive. As a series finale, there was just not enough information for me. It gave you a nice little ending, but it didn't give me any of the reasons about anything that had happened in these past 3 books, and it just was a disappointment. And my least favorite read of 2014 was Friendship by Emily Gold. I picked this up because it was about 2 best friends in their 30s where they are starting to go through different life changes and their friendship is evolving, and there was just no underlying message about friendship. I just did not enjoy reading about 2 catty, whiny mean girls who undermined each other at every step. I really hated the way that one of the characters talked about women who don't have kids will never be mature on the same level as moms are. As women, we have to stop doing that to each other. I know that that was a character, and it may not have been the personal opinions of the authors, but the story that was portrayed was not at all what I wanted as someone in a similar phase of life as those characters. It painted such a bleak portrait of adult friendship, and it made me feel terrible about myself. Just shame on you, book. Alright, so there are my favorites and my least favorites of 2014. If any of my favorites or worst books were on your list this year, let me know down below and leave a link to your video. I'd love to check it out. Bye guys!